She had lost the first set. On the exact same shape of scoreline that once cost her a title. What do you do when history looks like it's about to repeat itself, in front of the entire world, on center court? That question sat over Eala as she walked back to her chair, down 3-6, staring across the net at a rematch nobody had circled on their calendar a year ago. Stitched into her kit was a phrase in Tagalog, kapag lumago, hindi nahihinto. Once it grows, it cannot be stopped. But to understand what was about to happen, you have to go back exactly 1 year first. Rewind to 2025. The Eastbourne Open Final. This was the match that started the debt. Maya Joint rallied from a set down to beat Eala, 6-4, 1-6, 7-6, 12-10, and claim the title. A tiebreak decided by 2 points. 12-10. Not a blowout. Not a routine loss. A final decided by inches, in a breaker that could have gone either way until the very last point. That loss never left her. Think about what a tiebreak like that actually does to a competitor. It's not a straightforward defeat you can file away and move on from. There's no single mistake to isolate, no one moment you can point to and fix in training. 12-10 means the margin was almost nothing, a fraction of an inch on a line call, a bounce that went slightly differently, 1 point falling the other way. That kind of loss doesn't just end a tournament. It sits in the body. It waits. Since Eastbourne, Eala has broken into the top 50. Since Eastbourne, Eala has won a title in Birmingham. Since Eastbourne, Eala has reached the semi-finals in Berlin. Since Eastbourne, Eala has arrived at Wimbledon 2026 as the 29th seed, the first Filipina ever seeded at this tournament in its history. She is also the only player from the Philippines in the entire main draw. Here's a question worth sitting with before we go any further. Which of these two athletes changed more in 12 months? The one who quietly climbed the rankings, or the one who just knocked out a legend? Because here's the part of the story nobody accounted for. This was only Maya Joint's second ever Wimbledon appearance. Not a veteran of center court. Not someone with years of grass court scar tissue behind her. Just a 20-year-old, ranked world no. 87, walking into her second trip to this tournament and drawing one of the greatest players the sport has ever produced. Joint entered this year's Wimbledon unseeded, one of dozens of names buried in the bottom half of the draw. Then something happened that changed everything. In the first round, Joint faced returning 7-time Wimbledon champion Serena Williams. And she won, 6-3, 6-7, 6, 6-3. It was, by any measure, an announcement. Serena Williams had won 7 of her 23 Grand Slam singles titles, 2 of them right here, before Joint was even born in 2006. And on a raucous center court, Joint beat her anyway. This was not the same Maya Joint who had walked off with the Eastbourne trophy a year earlier. She was no longer just the name attached to a painful tiebreak. She was now the player who had ended Serena Williams' Wimbledon comeback. Eala arrived at this rematch carrying her own statement win. In the first round, she defeated Mexico's Renata Zarazua, 6-1, 6-2, becoming the first Filipina in the Open era to win a Wimbledon singles main draw match. It was, in fact, her second win of the tournament already, once the doubles draw was counted. The numbers behind that Zarazua win explain why it mattered so much. Eala broke serve 4 times. One of those breaks came against a familiar face. Zarazua had once been her doubles partner at the French Open. A former teammate, standing across the net, broken twice in a single afternoon. Not a warm-up. A warning. Consider the position Eala was in before a single ball had even been struck against Joint. 2 wins already banked at this Wimbledon. A seeding that had never existed for a Filipina before. A visor with a promise stitched into it. And across the net, waiting, the exact shape of the defeat that had followed her for a year. Sport rarely offers this clean a rematch. Usually the story moves on, the draw scatters, the rivalry fades into a line in a record book. This time, the tournament handed her the one opponent capable of either closing the wound or reopening it in front of the largest audience of her career. So how does a young woman who once lost a final by 2 points in a tiebreak respond when she's already down a set to that same kind of danger? She had 3 options: fold, survive, or answer. Eala chose to answer. In the second set, she pulled away from Joint to win 6-2, forcing a deciding third. She didn't panic. She adjusted. I really had to dig deep, especially after that first set, Eala admitted afterward. That's not false modesty. That's math. She had been in this exact position before, and lost. Maya came out on fire, she came out ready, and I was expecting a really good match, Eala said. Here's a detail worth pausing on. What does it actually take to erase a memory that's followed you for a full year? In the third set, Eala took full control. She swept it 6-0. Not a comeback. Not a rally. A statement, 6 games, 0 for her opponent, a set that ended the conversation before it even started. The full match was completed in under 2 hours. From 3-6 down to a 3-6, 6-2, 6-0 finish. A scoreline that echoed the shape of the Eastbourne final almost exactly, except this time the third set was never close. 12-10 had become 6-0. Here's what the headlines will call it: revenge. Eala herself never used that word. She obviously is coming off an amazing win, Eala said of her opponent afterward, referring to the Serena Williams upset. I watched it, and I think she played really well and handled herself really well in that situation. That's respect, not rivalry, and it makes the win harder to dismiss as simple payback. The victory did more than end the Wimbledon run of Serena Williams' conqueror. It also opened up Eala's schedule. She is now competing in the doubles tournament as well, pairing with Nikola Bartunkova to face Jelena Ostapenko and Sofia Kenin on Friday morning, Philippine time, a second front in the same tournament, opened by a single Thursday win. 2 former Grand Slam singles champions, on the other side of that doubles net. That's the kind of company Eala's Wimbledon has put her in now, less than a week after arriving as the 29th seed with a point to prove. A tournament that started with 1 goal, survive the singles draw and see how far a first-time seeding could carry her, has quietly turned into 2 campaigns running at once, each one adding its own weight to a run that was already rewriting the record books for her country. Now here's where the story stops being about one match and starts being about something bigger. What does one win actually change for an entire country? The result added another line to a growing list of firsts. First Filipina to win a Wimbledon singles main draw match. First Filipina seeded at Wimbledon in the tournament's history. First Filipina to reach the 3rd round of a Grand Slam. Etched onto the back of her sun visor at Wimbledon was that same Tagalog phrase, once it grows it cannot be stopped. It was not the only piece of home she carried onto center court. For her Wimbledon debut the previous year, Nike had supplied her with a custom hair tie adorned with a single sampaguita bloom, the national flower of the Philippines. Small details, easy to miss if you're only watching the scoreboard. But they matter, because they tell you this was never just about one player chasing one trophy. Every match Eala plays at this tournament carries a country that has never had a representative go this far. There is no blueprint for her to follow, no Filipina predecessors run to measure herself against. She is writing the blueprint as she goes, one round at a time, with a visor and a hair tie doing the quiet work of reminding her why. I think it's so sentimental to be able to wear things, or I guess to carry parts of my culture with me on court, Eala said. It's a huge reason as to who I am. I think where I come from is a big part of who I am and a big part of who I want to become in the future. For me to be able to represent the Philippines in Wimbledon, and in the biggest stages in the world, it means so much to me, she added. This was only Eala's 6th Grand Slam tournament. She trains at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca. She is from Quezon City. She is 21 years old. It sounds super impactful when you say it like that, Eala said, when told of her milestone moment for Philippine tennis. It's an amazing thing for me to be able to do that for my country. But I guess it's also very emotional every time I'm able to pass a new step or break new ground, just because it's also personal goals and personal achievements. I'm not trying to be anyone who I'm not. I'm not trying to stray from my values, she said. But the story doesn't end with a milestone. It ends with a much bigger question waiting on the other side of this win. What happens when the biggest win of your career earns you the toughest possible reward? Because the win over Joint set up the next chapter of this run. A 3rd-round match against defending champion Iga Świątek, a 6-time Grand Slam champion chasing something almost nobody has managed in a decade, retaining the Wimbledon crown. What happens when first Filipina in round 3 suddenly becomes first Filipina to face a 6-time Grand Slam champion? Świątek's own path to this match had drama of its own. She had already been pushed to 3 sets in her opening round by Taylor Townsend, an early scare for a defending champion. In the 3rd round, she faced former world number 1 Karolina Pliskova and came through 6-1, 6-3. It wasn't entirely comfortable. Pliskova, a 34-year-old who had missed the entire 2025 season after rupturing ankle ligaments, and who had fallen to a ranking of 1,054 before fighting her way back into the top 100, actually led 2-0 at the start of the 2nd set. There were flashes of the pulverizing ground strokes that once carried her to the 2021 Wimbledon final, moments where she knocked the defending champion clean out of her comfort zone. But double faults gifted Świątek back-to-back service breaks, and she needed no second invitation to close it out. The win extended Świątek's streak to 26 consecutive Grand Slam tournaments, reaching at least the last 32, a run bettered only by Martina Navratilova and Conchita Martinez. I'm feeling more stable today, and that's good. The first round was really emotional for sure, Świątek said afterward. Today I felt like it was another day in the office. Even when she was playing fast and flat, I knew that my spin gives me control. Told that Navratilova, commentating on the match, had given her an A+, Świątek pushed back on her own review. I felt like I played so many dirty shots in that final game especially, I wasn't able to control them that much, she said. So maybe not A+, more like B I would say. Even a 6-time Grand Slam champion, fresh off a win, isn't fully satisfied with her own performance. That should tell you something about the standard Eala is about to walk into. This isn't an opponent who stumbled into a third round and got lucky with the draw. This is a player extending a streak that stretches back to a US Open. Most of her current opponents were still juniors for, a player who treats a routine straight sets win as a game still worth self-critiquing down to individual shots. I think it's going to be tough for me. I'm going to try to make it tough for her, as well, Eala told reporters, looking ahead to the matchup. I'm expecting a great challenge. But I think I'm ready for it. Sit with that for a second. A defending champion, chasing a record only 2 women in history have matched. A 26-tournament Grand Slam streak that stretches back to 2019. And a 21-year-old from Quezon City who has already, in the space of 1 week, outfought the player who ended Serena Williams' comeback. The stadium that went quiet in the first set was on its feet by the third. Think back to where this story began. A scoreboard reading 3-6, a player walking back to her chair carrying the exact memory of a tiebreak she'd lost by 2 points a year earlier. Nobody watching that first set would have predicted the third would end 6-0. Nobody watching Eastbourne in 2025 would have predicted any of this. The seeding, the milestones, the sun visor with a promise on it standing up to its first real test. And somewhere in Quezon City, the phrase on her visor held, "Once it grows, it cannot be stopped." Saturday will decide how far it grows next.